he's like, what use is a birthright to me when I'm dead? Take it. I'm like, dude, that's kind of melodramatic. It makes no sense. In modern terms, your father's Donald Trump and you're about to inherit the business and the billions of dollars. And you come in, your brother's eating some greasy pizza for Pizza Hut, and you're like, hey, bro, get me a slice of that. Yeah, sure, sign over the company. Sure, what use is the company to me when I'm dead? Take it. When you go into Jasher, it makes a lot more sense, because there it says that Nimrod, who was a mighty hunter of the field, the same claim to fame that Esau had. So it's kind of like the Highland. There can only be one daddy. And so one had to go. And it said that Nimrod had built up resentment and hatred and envy toward Esau all of his days. Makes it out like he went to the field to hunt this hairy beast of a man named Esau. But Esau hides himself. It says he cuts off his head and kills 2 of his Gibborim, the same word used to describe the Nephilim.
I think we all get the feeling that something just isn't right in the world. Welcome, fellow foilers, to the Tinfoil Hat Club, where we dare to discuss all the things we don't talk about in church. And where yesterday's fiction becomes tomorrow's fact.
When you've got a government that's lying to your face, controlling the information through the media that it owns, that's not a recipe for peace in a civilization.
Atonement. The electromagnetic waves affecting our planet.
Megalithic cyclopean sites.
Anderson Cooper, intern for the CIA.
Watchers in the days of Noah.
Well, hello and welcome to the Tinfoil Hat Club. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Ben.
And thank you for joining us yet again. All right. Well, if you're joining us via the live stream, thank you guys so much. Do not forget, we can actually see your messages coming in from Rumble, Rumble, YouTube, and also our website, thetfhc.com. So if you guys want to join the show, you can. If you're listening to this on Apple, Spotify, or something like that later on, then you are listening to the edited replay that'll come out a few weeks from now. You can always join us for our live streams if you go to thetfhc.com/live stream. So thetfhc.com/live stream, and live stream, and I will put that up on the screen right there so you can see. You can actually click and see when all of our upcoming live streams are going to be. You can hit the little bell icon and add it directly to your calendar. You can also just go to our website, thetfhc.com, and hit the view live, I think, or live stream, whatever it is right there, the pink button, and it will take you to that exact same place. So there you go. As always, we enjoy having you with us. So if you want to join us for the live, that'd be fantastic. But if you're listening to this in the replay, we love having you guys too. So have any questions or whatever, you can reach out to us at thedudes@thetfhc.com. That is our email. So we love to hear from you guys as well. So thedudes@thetfhc.com. And we have a great show for you guys today. We are going to talk to our friend, Justin Brown. So Justin, actually, there he is, the man, the myth, the legend. You might have seen him show up in our live chat, and he's actually already in our live chat today, but he is a good friend of ours. So he runs his own show. If you have not checked it out yet, it is actually the Prometheus Lens. So you can actually find Justin. He's out there in pretty much all the same avenues that we are. But Justin, what's the best place that you would like to send your folks to?
Oh, man. First off, thanks for having me. And, but yeah, Prometheus Lens Podcast.com, all the social medias, anywhere you can consume fine content, you can find me there. Just search up Prometheus Lens Podcast.
Awesome. Yeah, Justin agreed to join us today. We're going to talk about his favorite passion subject, which is the Epic of Esau. So you might catch Justin. He started to work the circuit, going to some different conferences now, which is kind of awesome. So he started to, you just got back from the LBL conference that actually is put on by our friends over at Camp Hermon down in Kentucky. And you actually gave, I think, a little bit of this presentation, or on this topic, I should say, while you were down there. So we're going to get into this today. This is a passion area for Justin. But yeah, man, if you haven't checked out his show, please do. Prometheus Lens Podcast. We got started right about the same time, but Justin also is a part of the Dig Bible podcast. So if you guys are familiar with that, you can check him out there too. And what's a good place for them to check out the Dig?
Same thing, guys. Anywhere you consume content. And we did have a website, but we recently just let that go because this is just kind of a fun thing we do. We're not really selling merch or subscriptions or any of that kind of stuff. So we just thought it was a waste of money on a website. So you can't find us on the interwebs, but you can find us on social media and YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and all those fine establishments.
That's right.
Oh, the fine establishments, as long as you remain good boys and girls and don't step outside of the lines.
Oh,
So our goal today is actually to get Justin completely banned from YouTube. No, we're not going to do that to him. Well, we get ourselves in enough trouble, but we've been good for a while. But yeah, no. So Justin, man, thanks again so much for joining us today. And I guess just for fun, I kind of wanted to start off today and just kind of ask you, I know obviously know a little bit about the story, but just to kind of share with everybody else, get to know you a little bit, how you got started in the podcasting world and, just share with us some of that story if you would.
Man, I'm just a 9-to-5 knuckle dragger. I've always been a factory rat all my life. And I was the kid that, grew up in church and was really passionate about the Bible. I was that really annoying kid that asked the teacher a million questions. Probably got on their nerves, but I just had a genuine curiosity for it. And I always loved history. That was one of my favorite subjects in school. But never liked to read. Was never a big reader. Of course, teenage years rebelled and came back in my later 20s or mid 20s, I should say. And just happened to stumble across this guy named Trey Smith from God in a Nutshell. And he was talking about UFOs, demons, giants, angels, breeding with the daughters of men, and all this stuff I'd never heard before. And it was just seemed really radical to me. And I was like, dude, I know my Bible. I know it well. And that stuff ain't in there, bro. You're a liar. And I went to my Bible and started looking and started seeing all this stuff. It's like I was reading it for the first time. And then he led me to Michael Heiser and Derek Gilbert and all these other great minds in this space. And it was just mind-blowing. And it excited me to get back into my Bible again. And so all of a sudden, man, I was this guy that couldn't stop reading. So I was reading 2 or 3 books at a time. I couldn't get enough of this stuff, and started watching more YouTube videos and stuff like that. And this happened probably around 2012. And I was like, hey, man, I want to expose more people to this. And if it excites me this much and makes me fall back in love with the Word of God and everything all over again, why wouldn't I want to do that for other people? So I reached out to 15, 20 people in my friend circle in my church for like a men's group, or just the guys hang out and discuss these things, and had 3 guys show up. And long story short, ended up just making a podcast after 3 meetings, and done that for a year and a half, 2 years. And like I said, that's just a Bible study, looking at the fringy stuff in the Bible and the weird stuff of the Bible. And I was like, man, there's so much more interconnectivity with conspiracy theories, cryptids, aliens, ancient lost civilizations, all this stuff. It filters right through the Bible. And so, like I said, I was always a big history guy and loved that kind of stuff. So I was like, I want to start another show and just go into all those different topics, but filter it through a biblical lens. So that was the birthing of the Prometheus Lens. We actually just surpassed our 1-year mark just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, man. Congratulations. Let's see here. See if I can get to it. I think I got it right here. Nope, that's not it. I got an applause button somewhere, but we'll save it for later. But yeah, no, congratulations, man. Yeah, I think you got started maybe 2 months after we did, because we hit our year in August, I think, as we got started in August. So
yeah, it's the weirdest thing to be in this world, isn't it? It's strange. Like the other night, I'm fixing dinner and I get a call or a text from Zen Garcia.
Oh, hey.
Yeah, I'm like, pinch me. It's just like you become friends with everybody, and everybody should be working together for the common, and that is to lead people to Christ.
Yeah.
And get deeper in their Bible, and that's what's so great about this. We're going to be discussing stuff that people might not agree with, but hopefully they learn something.
Yeah. It's a funny thing because really what happens when it's so funny listening to you share that story in more detail because I'm sitting here listening and I'm seeing my same story through your words. And it's so funny because once you go back to your Bible and you start looking and you start seeing this stuff and you think to yourself, how did I not see this before?
Yeah.
And then when you start to understand it, right, and you start to have the veil kind of pulled from over your eyes and get all that dirt and crust out of your eyes that you've had for years, and you start to really understand the depth of spiritual warfare, it not only makes you understand the entire Bible in greater detail, but the richness and depth of all of God's word comes alive like never before. And what Christ was doing for us when he was here and what he was undoing while he was here, you have such a greater understanding and a richness and field of depth for like what he was doing. So it's an amazing experience. And it's just so fun because we kind of hopefully have other people have that same experience, right? It's like you go to see this really great movie and then you take other people to the great movie because you want to watch them. You've already seen it, right? You want to watch them. You want to experience
their reactions.
Yeah, experience it through their eyes for the first time when the veil is pulled off their face. And it's just such an enriching and rewarding experience. And God's been so good to the three of us for, all the blessings that he's poured out on both of these shows and these ventures. So
and there's nothing better to get those emails too, or those messages on, YouTube or Facebook, and somebody's like, man, you just totally blew my mind.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to open my Bible again.
Yeah. We've had those
thank
too.
you, and stuff like that. It's just amazing. It makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah.
I even had a guy today give me a comment that made my heart smile. He said, bless you, brother, and all that. He said, but keep doing what you're doing. He said, filling cups and blowing minds.
There you go. Oh no, it's awesome, dude. It really is such a joyous experience, and you probably see it too. Like, there's a lot of hate mail that you get out there too, and a lot of people spit a lot of vitriol at you. And unfortunately, I know what your experience is, but I know from our experience, I would be shocked if you told me it's any different. But everybody has a different experience. Most of the vitriol we get are actually from Christians.
Oh yeah, 100%.
We get a lot of spit sometimes from people who are just atheistic and just, want to rebel against God and get in there and spit at you. And that's one thing. But most of the really nasty ones are the ones that come from the Christians. Those are fun.
One thing I get for smoking. And that's one of those things is like when I had the discussion with my buddies, and I was like, you know what? I could easily deny myself a cigarette for an hour or 2 hours, but to me, it would just feel like I'm being fake and dishonest.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you guys, but there's been quite a few people I've met in this space that I've kind of put on a pedestal that once I had interactions with them in person, it's like, dude, they're totally different.
Yeah.
And they disappointed the hell out of me, to be honest. I was like, I do not want to be that. If I'm that guy, when I smash my finger on it with a hammer, there's a 4-letter word going to come out. If I get mad in traffic, I might give somebody a birdie every once in a while. I'm not perfect.
Yeah, right.
But I try to be, honest,
real.
open. What you see is what you get. Yeah. And so I just said, if I want a cigarette while I'm talking to somebody, I'm going to smoke a cigarette. But those Christians are the ones that are coming in there and being like, you should be ashamed of yourself talking about the word of God and smoking. Don't you know there's little ones watching you, and your body's a temple, and you're sinning right in front of us, and you shouldn't be doing this. And I'm just like, man, if y'all only knew me and all the all the crap that I pulled I pulled myself out of, but that God pulled me out of, I've come a long way. And my only vice is a cigarette that I can buy right down the street at the store. I'm doing pretty good.
I think so too.
And something like that's not going to keep me from talking about my passion and my love for the scriptures, and try to spread this fire to other people.
That's right.
I always say smoking won't send you to hell, just make you smell like you've been there.
Yeah.
I mean, what's different between smoking and speeding? Nothing.
What would happen if we all three popped a beer right now? Right. Everybody has their different philosophies, but it's funny too, because it's like, man, a lot of times that's I feel like it's an immaturity for somebody to have that stance, as far as, it's an immaturity of faith, right? Because it's like, and that's kind of what we encounter when we get all the vitriol spit at us, right? It's like your dad says all the time, they're still drinking milk and they never moved to meat.
Yeah.
And I was that way for a long time. I was drinking the milk until I had the veil pulled off my eyes and got back in there and started looking at things at a deeper level. That's when I really started to move up to eating the meat, right? And actually having my eyes open to more important things. But yeah, man, it's kind of awesome. So what's next for you, man? Like, what's big on the year 2 agenda? What are some things you're wanting to accomplish?
Well, honestly, I'm blessed that some close friends that I'd made through the show and social media reached out to me and wanted to help me on this adventure, because I was doing it all by myself for quite a while.
Yeah.
But I had a guy step forward and offered to help me with the editing and didn't want a dime. He's like, I told him, I said, man, I can't afford to pay you. Yeah. And he said, I didn't ask you for money. He said, I love the show. I love the content. I support what you're doing and I want to help. I'm an audio engineer. Your content, he said, I enjoy thoroughly. He said, but the quality is not as good as some of these big name shows. He said, so I can bring that and I want to help. And I was like, dude, awesome. So Jason came on board and helped me. And then my buddy Max, I seen them both in the chat here earlier. I don't know if they're still here, but thank you guys. You're a huge blessing. Max stepped up and been kind of my hype man. She's all over social media and getting on the accounts and sharing my stuff. And so I've been fortunate to have a team, and we usually get together at least once a month and brainstorm and talk about future stuff. So I got some ideas going around. Of course, it's just time.
Yeah.
I have a full-time job and this, so I'm pretty limited on my time. But if the Lord decides to bless this, and this can be my full-time gig, I got some really great ideas and intentions in the works. I'm hoping next summer to put on my first conference, and I've already filmed, 3 documentaries. And so I have to edit those and put those together. So I'm just going to keep grinding, man. I got those films I want to try to edit. I got this book I'm trying to finish and get put out. So it's just nose to the grindstone, just keep doing what I'm doing and grow our community and grow our space and just see what the Lord has in store, man. It's a journey. I said yes and threw my sack and sword on my shoulder, and I'm seeing where the road goes, man.
Yeah,
we can make plans all day and God will laugh. So
I know.
Let's just walk and see where we end up.
Yeah, no, it's fun. Yeah, it's same for us, man. We got some big things we're wanting to do similar things that you got as well. And it's one of the nice things too is, there are a lot of people in this community that do work to help each other out, and a lot of great guests that are very, very giving of their time. So it's pretty awesome. But we've got one in here that is actually joining us from Australia. So Oscar Sanchez, thank you for joining us from Australia. That's pretty awesome.
That's awesome.
But yeah, good day, mate. so yeah,
Bobby.
There you go. So as far as the Epic of Esau, what for you really drew you, right? Like what there was the draw for you?
Honestly, it just started off as a catty joke between friends. It was me, Ben, and Steve. We were doing an episode of The Dig, and I actually got the guy that red pilled me on the show, Trey Smith from God in a Nutshell, and I was super stoked. And like you were talking about Zen Garcia, he gave me a cell phone number, so we text back and forth and stuff. Awesome. And I'm just kind of like, oh my gosh, pinch me! I'm talking with Trey Smith. And he's called me a few times, left some voicemails, and of course I'm like, those will never be deleted.
I know, that's how I feel.
Schoolgirl, man. Like when we
Yeah.
got confirmed Zen, that was like one of like his probably was that your marquee face on the Mount Rushmore? It was probably he had to be one of the four.
Yeah, because he's one of the few that's living that's still.
Yeah, that's true. How many of
So-
these guys have passed away? But yeah.
Yeah, I was. Oh man, I understand what you're saying.
He was fangirling big time.
Oh yeah, I understand 100%. And so he made a little comment. He's like, "Well, you guys are from East Tennessee." He said that's Bigfoot country. Maybe I should next time I'm down that way, we hook up and we go Bigfoot hunting. I was like, "Yeah, man, come on down." And I just out of nowhere just thought of Genesis 25:25, the birth of Esau, where it says he come out covered in hair from head to toe like a hairy cloak and was red. And I was like, "Hey, man, you never know. Esau could have been like the first Bigfoot seed." And we had a big laugh about it. And I knew the stories about Bigfoot, but I've never been a Bigfoot enthusiast. I was that guy that would, buy a cool Bigfoot shirt or a sticker, or something like that. But I was never like deep dived into it. I never listened to the stories. I didn't even know the story of the Patterson Gimlin film and all that. I just kind of knew that blurry picture of him walking sideways. So I was pretty ignorant on all of it. But just that passage alone, his description, I was like, that's what we would call today a Bigfoot. And I just kind of set it to the side. And God just threw puzzle pieces in front of me as I was walking down the road. So it was like trying to think. I had Gary Wayne on the show, and we covered the Epic of Gilgamesh. And as he was talking, and I was reading and doing all my studying and stuff. I was like, man, this guy Enkidu sounds just like Esau. And once again, I just kind of put it back on the shelf. And then I was doing another show with somebody when I had to read and study into the book of Jasher. And there I found Nimrod and Esau, fought to the death. And there was these garments in there. And I was like, dude, that sounds just like this Epic of Gilgamesh. It's just, as Derek Gilbert says, it was the twisted fallen realm version, the Epic of Gilgamesh, because whoever controls the narrative is going to spin it positively in their favor. And I just started studying all these different things, and I just kept finding all these little pieces. I found stuff in Jasher and then Jubilees, and then I got into the Midrash, and it was like I kept finding all these little pieces of this very enigmatic character named Esau in the Bible. We get just a few little stories about him, and that's it. But when you read all these other books and compare them to Scripture and line them up like a puzzle, man, they fit perfectly, and you get a better 30,000-foot view of this guy named Esau. And it is, man, it's an epic tale. So the title of the book, The Epic of Esau, is very fitting for this story. And I can't take credit for the title. Bo Kennedy from The Bump, he was the first person that I actually laid my research out and gave a discussion on his show. And when I laid out all the stuff to him on the phone, he was like, yeah, dude, this is awesome. He's like, what do you want to call it? I was like, I don't know. Give me some time to think on it. He's like, I know what I'd call it. I was like, what? He said, The Epic of Esau. I'm like, oh yeah, dude, that's awesome. Run with that.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome,
So
dude.
yeah, it was just little pieces lining up in front of me, and I was just grabbing them as I went. And then next thing you know, I had this full picture. And after I did that show, I had several people reach out, and Bo was like, he said, Justin, because we done that in like November, I think it was last year. And he messaged me like, what is it, the Wrapped, where they show you your stats at the end of the year?
Yeah.
He was like, Justin, you're not going to believe this. He's been doing this for 4 or 5 years. He's got a pretty good following.
Mm-hmm.
And he sent me the screenshots, and it was insane. Like, it'd only been out for a month or two, and it shot to like in his top 5 most downloaded episodes.
That happened to
And
us.
all the
when we
emails
came.
that I got was like, man, you need to do a book. You need to do a book. I mean, I can't count how many people reached out to me. It was like, you should write a book. And I'm like, all right, let's go.
Yeah. The only thing in your head was probably like, yeah, no problem. Let me find time to do that too.
Yeah.
At the time you had this happen, were you still doing kind of everything from the editing perspective and all that on your show?
Trying to think. I can't remember. I think I was at this time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you wrote how many pages is it?
Right now, I'm trying to think. It was like 130 something pages.
Okay.
Is what I got so far. So by the time you get it formatted,
Yeah.
you can about double that number. So if I was just to guess, if it was just a standard size book, it would probably be, something like that. It wouldn't be too intimidating.
Yeah. And again, just so everybody's clear, this book is not out yet. Justin's still working on it. He's getting into kind of the editing phase and the formatting phase and all that. So what do you think timeline-wise? What do you think your timeline is for release?
I've had a few people ask me, man, and I hate to comment and miss a deadline.
False expectations, yeah.
Because when we first talked about it in November, and then I did the second show after I'd started writing it, Derek Gilbert and a few other people, I went on their show, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I hope to have it out by spring. It gives 5, 6 months. Yeah, and that was spring of this past year. So
yeah, right. Yeah, I think anyone
don't know
who's
what you don't know.
That's right. Anybody who's written a novel would have listened to that and went, yeah, that's cute.
So do you think Esau was really tall then too?
I think if Esau was in fact Enkidu in the Epic of Gilgamesh, or at least the inspiration and based off of, according to the Epic of Gilgamesh, it said that he was shorter, but he was stout.
Yeah.
That Nimrod was taller than him, but he was just, bulky and big. So I think that's how he was. I don't think that he was a Nephilim giant.
Yeah.
But he definitely, as the story progresses, he intermarries into giant clans.
Yeah.
Yeah. He does.
So the way that you see it for the Epic of Gilgamesh is Gilgamesh would represent Nimrod, and then Enkidu would represent Esau.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And obviously, being a tale, because I think there's, how many years are between the two? Do you know off the top of your head, between Nimrod and between Esau, like how many generations or whatever are between them?
I have no clue. I just went off the book of Jasher, that they were both alive at the same time. And then a lot of historians line up Gilgamesh with Nimrod.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, if that's the way it is, and of course, if it's told from their point of view, the twist is, according to the Epic of Gilgamesh, is that they have this epic battle, but Gilgamesh wins. And then they become best friends, and they go on all these epic adventures together.
Yeah.
Where the book of Jasher has Esau killing Nimrod.
That's where you draw it from.
Yeah, I think he was like 200 and change, Nimrod.
Nimrod was.
Yeah. I think that's what Jasher said. I'm not sure if don't quote me on that, but when he was killed. And so Esau was probably a young man.
Yeah.
When that happened.
It's funny that you've gotten into this, and the other thing that I've started to zero in on, which we came on your show and talked about. Yeah, I don't think that hasn't come out yet, because we're going to simultaneously release it, I think is what we talked about. But I've been zeroing in on how all of the backstory of how Nimrod really came to be, and all of the Jubilean information on Kainam, which ties into that whole deal on the other god worship, and it ties into Abraham and everything else. So the two stories are really tied together, which is interesting that you're zeroing in on that and I'm zeroing in on the other. And I sat down and I started writing too. And it was before I even knew, I think, that you were writing anything. Then you and I talked, I think, at one time, and I started writing, and it started to morph into something else, and like kind of a bigger book. And so I kind of had to take a step back away from it for now and kind of shelve it. So I'm definitely not giving anybody any dates. Oh, here he goes. He's hellbound. Smoking on our, we've had our first smoker on our show.
That's what Sam Tripoli said too. He was like, dude, I think you're the first person to smoke on this show. I love it.
Hey brother, we brought you on to have you, not some fake version of it. So you do whatever. We enjoy it, man. So, yeah. So tell me a little bit. So what's kind of the format of the book going to be about, man? Like, it's like, are you kind of going to like what's your writing style, I guess, for this? Like, how do you approach it? Just kind of mashing everything together?
Yeah, well, here's the thing is I'm not a writer. I've never written a book, but I put my personality into it. So I'm using my good old boy language, and I cut some jokes, you know, I have a little bit of sarcasm and stuff in there. So I try to keep my voice as true as it could be in the writing of the book. But I also approached it on how I would prefer books to be. Because me, I'm a researcher, and I read these books to extract the puzzle pieces and the gold nuggets. And for me, there's nothing more frustrating to go through a book that's this thick and there's a lot of just word salad and fluff. And then by the time I power through this entire book, I could have compressed this into a 4 or 5 page summary and just got the meat.
Yeah.
And I know some people enjoy, you know, the wordsmithing and the narrative of the stories and stuff. It's like, dude, I want the meat.
Yeah.
So when I wrote this, and that was one of my things that actually kind of made me have some pause for a while, because when I was writing it, I was so hung up on how big it was. I'm like, I don't want to release this. It's not even 100 pages, but I had the majority of what I wanted to convey done in that time frame.
Yeah.
But then I was like, people's going to laugh at you. This is a kid's book. This is a comic book. You're not going to be taken seriously. You're going to have to make this thing a little thicker. And then I was like, after I got thinking about it, I'm like, well, no, because that's one of the things you hate. And you're writing this for people like you that are researchers and want the gold nuggets. They want the treasure. And so I do lay everything out and try to give a good narrative, a good flowing narrative, but it's a lot of rapid fire. It's like I could have easily wrote 4 or 5 pages of great details and a lot of extra little stuff to get to the main points and the gold nuggets. But I purposefully trim the fat. That way, when you're reading this book, it's like, whoa, mind blow. Whoa, mind blow. Next, like every page, there's a gold nugget in there. And after I had actually written it and sat down and looked at it, I was like, yeah, this is what I want. I got to let my ego go and worried about how thick it is and people's going to take you seriously. The story you want to tell is here. All the gold nuggets are here, and people don't have to fluff through a lot of word salad to get it. I think they're going to enjoy it. And how I lay it out is I have the premise of the story, just kind of like a quick overall thesis. But then I go back and I start at the garden and I lay the foundation of the Nakash. And I talk about my Kaiser and how that word, instead of being serpent, you know, can mean the shining one or the one who practices divination.
Mm-hmm.
Then I talk about Adam and Eve when they fell and the garments that was given to them from God. How I believe that is the coverings of Satan, of the Nakash. And then I take you through Ezekiel 28 and how it says, you were in the garden of God. Every precious stone was your covering. Diamond, beryl, onyx, topaz, gold inlays were your settings. They were perfect, and you were perfect the day they were created. So it's describing a priestly ephod. And then it says in there that you profaned your sanctuary. So he even had a sanctuary. It's describing this Nakash in a priestly role. So I use that to kind of back up, build my hypothesis that when they fell, he was stripped of his position and it was given to Adam. And then I kind of go off into the Midrash and the rabbis and how they all trace their origins to the priesthood to Adam. They say Adam was the first king and priest of all creation. And that's why, because it was bestowed upon him when it was taken away from the Nakash. And then from there, I go into the birth of Esau and how I I think, and not only I think, that the ancient people thought that Esau was a serpent seed, because I draw the correlations where the cursings come out. It says that she would have a seed and he would have a seed, and there would be enmity between the two. And then that first prophecy, it says that one's going to bruise the head and the other's going to bruise the heel. Well, that's exactly what you see at the birth of these twins.
Yeah.
But it's like Satan stepped in, and I say this too. I said, if my theory holds water, it makes a lot more sense, because Satan perverts things. He likes to flip them on their head and invert them. So he could easily just turn those children in the womb to where his seed came out first, where his seed's foot was bruising the head of the chosen seed. And Jacob was bruising the heel because he was holding the heel coming out of the womb. And it makes sense because he's trying to get back his position, the garments, the birthright. So if his seed comes out first, then his family line gets the garments back.
Just had a thought. And God hated Esau.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why.
Because he was of
Yeah.
kind of a Satan seed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, brother. It's good to be right,
And
isn't
then-
it?
Yeah. And then when you look at the Flavius Josephus,
Yeah.
and this is why I said, whether it was literally true or not, the people of that time believed it to be. Because Flavius Josephus, in his writings, when he talks about the strife between the brothers, he was a historian and he was a wordsmith. He chose his words very wisely. And you have this thing called the law of first mention. Anytime a word is used first, it sets the standard. And when they use that word again, it's pointing back to that event when it was first used. It's kind of like a word association type thing. So he chose his words very carefully in writing his histories. And you know what the word he chose to describe the conflict between the brothers? Enmity.
Mm-hmm.
Makes
There you
sense.
go. Yeah, this gets into a little bit of a pre-show discussion we had, which is the Satan seed in Genesis.
Yeah.
And the thinking that Cain actually was the seed of Satan. I personally am not in that camp, but I'm open to listening to more of the presentation behind it, because that's not something I've spent a ton of time on. And I think that's important too. Like, again, if you listen to any of this, and we say this all the time on our show, which is, hey man, don't take our word for it. If anything we say drives you back into your Bible, then mission accomplished, right? It's all about getting in there and reading for yourself. So no,
It wasn't until I talked to Joy that I actually entertained the idea. And it's just the good old boy logic to me, how she laid that out. And I'll repeat her example that she used. She said, this was Old Testament. It was Mosaic law, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. She said, and if you look, all the cursings from God are directly related to the crime.
Yeah.
So she said, when I was a little girl, there was a cookie jar above the refrigerator. She said, my mother was very strict on not having sweets before dinner. She said, we knew that. Mom was cooking dinner. She walked outside into the living room to do something. Me and my sister thought we could hurry up and get up there and get some cookies and eat them before she got back in. And she said, we got caught. She said, what's the first thing we did when she walked into the room? Covered our mouth.
Yeah.
She said, because that's where we transgressed. That's where the shame was. She said, what happened to Adam and Eve?
Mm-hmm.
After they partook of the tree, they covered their private parts. Then you have the cursing, she said. If the sin was eating, he could have cursed her with a sour stomach or vomiting or rotten teeth. The cursing was correlated to childbirth, birth pains, which is the result of a sexual act. And then she said it's followed up by cursing of the seeds. and curses the seed of her and the Nakash.
Yep.
She said, and if you go in, she said the etymology, Cain's name can mean that he was acquired.
Yeah.
And the one thing people use to dismiss this serpent seed doctrine is the misuse of it by racist organizations, because the Ku Klux Klan and some of these other racists use this doctrine to justify genocide, saying that, oh, this serpent seed people, they're not even human. They got to be eliminated, kill them all. So just because someone took a doctrine and manipulated it and perverted it and used it to their own wicked end doesn't make the theory bad.
Yeah.
But that's what they use to swat it down. And then that one verse where it says that Adam knew his wife and she bore Cain. But that's the only verse they got. And they say, well, no, it says right here. Well, when you go into the original languages, when it talks about them eating or taking in, and it's usually like translated as like consume or eat. When you do a word search study on that in Logos, that word's translated to many different variations. But one of those that it's translated quite often is the word enjoyed. So they partook of the tree. It says that Eve partook of the tree and she enjoyed it. And then she went to her husband and he also enjoyed. And then when you get to this where it says, and Adam knew his wife, it goes back to Greek mythology and all these other mythologies. People don't realize, like Hercules, he was a twin, but he had a brother that was completely human because his mother slept with her husband and conceived the human child. Then Zeus came and germinated another seed, and that was Hercules. And she gave birth to twins, but they had different fathers. And this is something you see scientifically to this day.
Yeah.
It happens. I actually talked to Heidi Love from the Unfiltered Rise podcast. She is a nurse. And she said, I've been in the delivery room and helped deliver. She said, twins from different fathers. She said, one was black and one was white. She said, it's something that happens a lot. So it's like it's something that happens that we can see. It's in our mythos and a lot of the legends. So why would it be out of the question here? And then where it says that where he knew his wife and then she bore Cain, it's talking about delivery. It ain't talking about conception. He knew his wife and then she bore Cain. And then it says, and then again bore Abel. So it's talking about the birthing of twins. It wasn't talking about, the germination of seed.
Yeah.
It says that he had, relations with her, and then later she gave birth to twins. So that verse, in my opinion, doesn't dismiss this theory.
Yeah. It kind of opens it up.
Yeah. And if it is correct, it answers a lot of questions, a lot of open-ended stuff in your Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it does.
So this same event would have had to have occurred with Rebecca.
And it's either that,
Right?
I said it in the book. I said, and I'm not dogmatic about it. It could have been spiritual. It could have been physical. But the land she come out of was a land that serves pagan gods. And if you remember, the cupbearer goes to get her, right? And tells her father that, trying to think, I'm having a brain fart. Abraham is called forth for his son Isaac to have a wife from this land, and the God they serve has presented her before me at the well, and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And pay attention to his response. He says, I can neither speak good nor ill of this God. And I'm like, You can't speak good of Yahweh, but at the same time, you can't speak bad of Yahweh. So that shows me he didn't know them.
Yeah.
So they served other gods.
Yeah.
And these are the same ones that, they had teraphim, and they were stealing the teraphim. So, and you look to the history, they served all these fertility gods. And without fail, all these fertility gods were like the wild men, like Esau. They were covered in hair from head to toe. They were the wild men of the woods. So, I'd say it in the book, this is just a theory. I said, in the ancient world, if you couldn't produce a son, you were scared to death that you were going to be cast to the side. You were useless back in that time.
Mm-hmm.
And she was getting up there in age, and she hadn't bore any children or sons. So would it be out of line to think that just like Abel or Cain, Yahweh wasn't blessing him? So in desperation, he turned to a God that would bless him. So if Rebecca was getting in her older age and hadn't born any children yet, she'd be desperate.
Mm-hmm.
So I theorize either her or her handmaiden, because it says in the scripture that the handmaiden went with her. So they come from a land that worshiped other gods. They had these fertility gods that were covered in hair from head to toe. That in a moment of desperation, either her or her handmaiden prayed to this God to bless them. And this would explain why they were so different when they were born. And it would also explain her guilt and her favor toward Jacob for her moment of distrust and turning to another God, done everything in her power to make sure that the human child, the chosen seed, was the one exalted and got the birthright and the blessings. And that's why she went through so much trouble to deceive Isaac.
I'm trying to remember, isn't it? Don't they wind up going back to Haran to get their wives? Do you remember off the top of your head, either of you?
It was Haran or Midian, something like that.
I think it was, because that's another thing you need to understand, is that you don't necessarily get in the Bible. Haran, which is in Turkey, is the absolute center seat of all of the worship of these false gods. That's how this really started again after the flood. And then that spread down to what we would know as Mesopotamia, which was the land of Ur and the Chaldean area and Babylon and all these places. And Abraham left Ur and actually went with his father, Terah, back to Haran. And that's where we have God start working in Abraham, with Abraham to deliver him into the promised land and the whole promise of future generations and everything from there. And I think they were going back to their hometowns to get their wives, because the absolute 150% rule was you do not go marry Canaanite women.
Yeah.
And Esau, the first thing he does, I think, is he goes running off and he gets a couple Canaanite wives.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah. And, like I said, it was just a hypothesis of that. All my research and study shows that the people of that time believed him to be a serpent seed. Josephus talks about it, how they painted his birth was a complete mirrored image of the curse that happened in the garden. So if, in fact, this is the case, how could that happen? That's why I was just kind of storming in my head. And I was like, well, either they could have had a physical union, or it could have been a spiritual transgression where she turned to a familiar god of fertility that was covered in hair that she was familiar with and her family knew and worshipped at one time, and turned to him, to bless her womb and give her a child. And
it's interesting.
yeah,
Sorry,
so I could be wrong. It's not a cross or a hill that I'm prepared to die on, but it was just a theory of, how could this have played out? And then when I go on further in the book, I talk about the garments, the supernatural garments from the Garden of God, and how the book of Jasher describes that this is the birthright. That, I'm a Southern man, so to compare it to, we have grandma's quilted blanket, and the oldest daughter gets this blanket, and it gets handed down throughout the generations. The oldest daughter always gets this blanket. So this is kind of how that was. But it was with the sons, and the eldest son got the birthright, and this was the supernatural garments from the garden of God, and it was the symbol of priesthood and kingship.
Yeah.
And Book of Jasher follows that line, and it shows that Enoch had it, and Methuselah had it, and it went on to Noah, and it says that Noah had it when he went over the waters of the flood, and that it wasn't until Ham's going out that Ham stole the garments.
Yeah.
And then that's how they end up with Nimrod. But what's really cool is the common themes and correlations with other ancient histories and even films. Now, I just discovered this the other day, and I just put a video out on my channel about it. That movie, Noah, from 2014, I thought that was such a blasphemous movie.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, dude, they got this so wrong. Rock giants helping build the ark. I mean, this is just insanity. But after I watched that and got to thinking about it after I've done these studies, I'm like, whoever wrote this film was traveling down the same vein and line of thought that I am now. And that shows me they had to have read the Midrash, the Targums, the Book of Jasher, and all this stuff, and filtered it to the Bible and pieced together this narrative. Because if you pay attention, at the start of that movie, it shows Adam and Eve as light beings walking through the garden, holding hands.
Yep.
Then it shows this snake. What does it do? It sheds its skin. Its coverings are removed. And it's gold. They're shining. And Adam walks over and picks them up. So it's the coverings of the Nakash, the priestly robe, but depicted in that film as its literal skin, and Adam got it. And then you go through the movie, and Og has it. And Og sneaks onto the boat, and the wicked son, Ham, finds him and goes down there, and they become friends. He starts sneaking him food. But Ham, it shows him that he's infatuated with this gold skin of this snake that he wore around his arm or kept in a pouch. And while Og was asleep, Ham was just staring at it and thinking about stealing it. He even tries to get it, and Og wakes up and grabs him, holds a knife to him, and says, "This is for a man, and you're not a man yet." And then later, Noah discovers him. They get in this fight. Ham's watching. He's torn. He don't know who to help. One's his father, and the other's one person he's become friends with. But he ultimately runs up, stabs Og in the back, and Og stands up and turns around and grabs him, and he looks him right in the eye, and he says, "Now you're a man." And he hands him that snake skin. And then it shows the uncovering of thy father's nakedness, and the film depicts it as he walks and sees his father drunk and naked, and he just looks down like he's disappointed, and he throws that bag with the skin at his father. So the movie was saying that he rejected his birthright. And then at the end of the movie, it shows Noah take this gold skin of the Nakash and wrap it around his arm. And he's talking about Adam. He says, "This is our birthright that was given to Adam." He said, and God blessed him and said, "Be fruitful and multiply." He said, "Now this birthright is passed to us." He said, "And now it is your turn." And he touches the kids, the newborn babies, with that serpent skin. So it goes right in line with what I'm talking about, how this was the literal coverings of the Nakash given to Adam, and it was passed as a birthright. And then another example in history is the Greeks. When you look at Jason and the Argonauts, for those that's not familiar with that story, a man and a woman was to be sacrificed to Zeus. Athena comes down and helps them, gives them this golden ram that can fly, and says to get on this ram, and they would escape, and it would take them to safety. Yeah. And on the flight, the woman falls and dies. But then the ram lands in the midst of the Garden of Ares. And Athena shows back up and says, well, the woman's already dead, so kill the ram, and it'll be a substitute for your sacrifice. So he kills the ram, he removes its skins, its coverings, and places it on a tree in the midst of the Garden of Ares, and then it is guarded by a great serpent. And it goes parallel with Abraham and Isaac.
Yeah.
And what happens? He goes to go kill Isaac. Last minute, the angel of the Lord says no. And what's provided in the thicket as a substitute for the sacrifice?
Yeah.
A ram.
Yeah. It's so funny how it's always a mirrored, counterfeited image of scripture.
Yeah.
Like all of the, secret society stuff too. Same exact thing. It's always a mirrored image, right? And we see that played throughout the Bible.
Yep.
The same way. Sorry, I had to clear my throat. Played out the same way where we have Lucifer, who is also trying to pass himself off as a being of light. Same kind of thing. And it's so fascinating, man, how all this stuff has parallels to itself.
Didn't Nimrod end up with the garments as well? I think in Jasher.
And that ties in with the really confusing story. Well, I'm speaking for myself, but to me it was confusing. Story of the trading of the birthright. Did that make any sense to you guys when you heard that the first time?
Nope. But when I heard it from Jasher, it made perfect sense.
Which birthright are you talking about? Are you talking about Esau?
Yeah.
Where he kind of swindles him out of his birthright?
Yeah, but it just says in Genesis that he comes in from the field exhausted and asks for some soup. And Jacob's like, trade me your birthright. And then he's like, what use is a birthright to me when I'm dead? Take it.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, that's kind of melodramatic. It makes no sense. It's
right.
kind of like modern terms. Your father's Donald Trump and you're about to inherit the business and the millions of dollars or billions of dollars.
Yeah.
And you come in, your brother's eating some greasy pizza from Pizza Hut. And you're like, hey, bro, get me a slice of that. Yeah, sure. Sign over the company. Sure. What use is the company to me when I'm dead? Take it.
Yeah.
No. But like you said, when you go into Jasher, it makes a lot more sense because there it says that Nimrod, who was a mighty hunter of the field, the same claim to fame that Esau had. So it's kind of like the Highlander. There can only be one, Daddy.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And so one had to go. And it said that Nimrod had built up resentment and hatred and envy toward Esau all of his days. And it makes it out like he went to the field to hunt this hairy beast of a man named Esau. But Esau hides himself. It says that he cuts off his head and kills 2 of his Gibborim, the same word used to describe the Nephilim giants.
Yeah.
So he kills 3 Gibborim, and it says he takes the time to steal the garments, the supernatural garments from the garden of God that Ham stole in his going out. And then it picks up right where Genesis leaves off. It dovetails perfectly. So it was like he just had this epic battle and killed the king. And there were 3 giants. So he sustained some life-threatening injuries. He was on the run because he just killed the king. He was scared to death and probably bleeding out. That's why he said, what use is a birthright to me? Take it.
Yeah,
Save
I'm
me.
make it anyway. Yeah, you've said something similar. Now, I'm at a disadvantage because I have not read Jasher yet. I need to read Jasher. I think I brought it up one day, and I'm like, this is really long. I have to come back to this one. But no,
It's on Spotify. Just listen to it.
I need to read it. Yeah, no, it's cool. I need to read it.
It's what I do at work.
So now I know you'd mentioned earlier, one of the things I had written down to ask you, you'd mentioned earlier that there are some discrepancies in the text, right, as far as the story goes. So how do you, like, when you see that, what's your take on that? How do you approach that?
Now, discrepancies, what with Jasher?
Yeah, I think you said Jasher was a little bit different take than maybe another text, maybe Jubilees or whatever. I can't remember exactly what the other text was.
And with me, it's just, it's one of those things. I don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
I treat reading these texts just like I do conversations with people. I have conversations with several people that I don't agree with on a lot of their stuff.
Same for us.
But it's like everybody has a nugget. Everybody has a piece to the puzzle. So you have to sit down and know how to eat chicken. You have to separate the meat from the bone.
Yeah.
And so as I read these books, I just have my discernment about me. And if I see something, I go back to scripture and I hold it up beside scripture and I'm like, okay, this is completely opposite of what scripture says, or there's nothing even similar to this in scripture. Okay, that's a bone, throw it out.
Yeah.
But then if it dovetails in and it goes parallel with the story, but it adds more context and caveats, or it answers a question that's later in the Bible that's kind of ambiguous, and that adds more detail and ties a pretty little ribbon on an idea, then I'm like, okay, that's a piece of chicken. I'm going to eat that.
Yeah.
And I could be wrong. I'm human. But that's what I try to do. I try to just have scripture as the foundation stone or the screen, the sift.
Yeah.
As I'm picking up all this mud and water and shaking it through, and what stays is what I keep.
Yeah, it's pretty much same approach I have a lot of times when I read too. So in all your research, and I never was able to find this. I know this was something that your dad claimed one Sunday, but he claimed that all of the Pharisees in Christ's time actually came from Esau's line. Did you get into that at all when you were digging into things? Did you ever read that anywhere? I thought that was interesting.
But the thing is too, it's like a theological thing. But one thing I did discover is that Edom and Edomites was an epithet for anyone that was a hindrance or an adversary of God's people. They even referred to Rome and Romans as Edomites.
Interesting.
And that's why you get a lot of misled people who'll be like, oh no, the Israels were black people, and the whites were the Edomites, and the red that you hear is the blushy skin, and the hair is just beard. So it's saying pale skinned and red fleshy, skin with hairy beards, the white man, because it talks about Rome and all these other people that happen to be white races as Edom or Edomites. But that was just an epithet. If you go through and look, that's what anybody that was an enemy of God's people or an adversary to them, they referred to them as Edomites, because they were the enemies of God's people. So it was just kind of like a umbrella term that they used for their adversaries.
What another thing I wanted to ask, because you've gone into a lot of different things, is so far out of all like extra biblical texts that you've read, which one stands out to you that's your favorite one to read? That makes the most sense to you, that jives the most.
And that's the thing, is there's several of them that I really enjoy and I got a lot of nuggets out of, but at the same time, there's a lot of just crazy stuff that I think is just totally out in left field and makes no sense. And I can't remember which one it was, because I got a book that's got Jubilees, Jasher, First Enoch, all of them in there. And I was kind of going through there. So I can't remember which book it was, but I remember.
You start to mash them all together, don't you, in your head? It's hard. It's hard sometimes to distinguish.
But as I was reading it, I remember pulling out some really good nuggets that dovetailed, fit perfectly with scripture and answered questions. And then later on, it had some stuff that was just like, what? Like, for example, it was saying that whoever this person or the character was, they were trying to travel or get somewhere. And then Satan appeared as a river and went through the road and kept them going the
Jasher.
road.
Yeah, that was in Jasher.
And then they found a way across. And then Satan appeared as a lion. Just all these different things. It was like basically they were painting Satan as this magical genie manifesting in all these different ways to get in the person's way and stop them from doing what they were doing. And I was like, yeah, I can't, get down with that. That just,
Yeah, but when I listened to it, I could understand the metaphor.
right.
I understood what they were trying to do, but like, was it really, or was it just something that was there that they had to overcome? But they were like, yeah, that's Satan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I'm not justifying it, but I can understand the meaning behind it, because I mean, we all have adverse times in our life. And is it Satan? How do we look at it? How do you overcome that?
That's probably my logical mind, because as I was reading through that, I was taking like, okay, here's these garments. Oh, you can follow it through the genealogies. And man, this lines up with scripture, man. Yeah. So I'm sitting there like facts and findings, historical, context, mindset. And then all of a sudden you get to a chapter or part of the book that goes into allegory or poetic language. And I'm just like, it's hard for me to transition, because it's just like my technical mind.
Yeah, well, you start to think like, well, maybe what I read wasn't so good then. Maybe it's not. Maybe that part isn't. Maybe I shouldn't put so much stock into that stuff.
I did like in Jasher where Abraham was getting ready to sacrifice Isaac, and the ram came. And it said that ram was who God created, that ram for that moment from the beginning of time.
Oh,
And
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought, and it said the thicket was Satan, which I was like, I could see that, why Satan would want to stop
Oh, yeah.
the ram from approaching Abraham. And
I love in Jasher how it ties in with Nimrod, and how that they throw Abraham and his brother Haran into the furnace.
Yeah.
But Haran, where he didn't know God, burnt up.
Yeah.
And then the backstory is that, and this is pretty cool, that I enjoyed it. But at the birth of Abraham, or right before, one of the Magi sees a sign in heaven.
Yeah.
And then warns King Nimrod, there's a child born in your city that'll be your demise. And we have to find it and kill it.
Mm.
And so, and then his father Terah tricks him and gives him like a slave child.
Mm-hmm.
And then takes his son and gives him to Noah. And it says that Abraham basically grows up in the mountains of Ararat with Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and is trained in the ways of the Lord. And then when you get in the Bible where he just all of a sudden gets a guilty conscience about the idols. So me, as I was reading that story, it's like he grew up in this house. He was around this his whole life. Now all of a sudden he's got an issue with it. So that book of Jasher kind of ties that in, that he was in hiding because Nimrod thought he was dead. And once he become a man and was unrecognizable anymore, he returns home, and he been trained up in the ways of the Lord, and he sees his father making all these false gods and doing this blasphemous stuff. So he destroys the idols, and then Nimrod throws him in the fire, and then he survives the fire. So to avoid God's wrath, he gives him all this money, all these riches. And it says he even gave him 300 strong fighting men. And then that's when Abraham gets called and leaves. And like I said, I love it when you find these little nuggets that ties in to other places, because it says in Genesis, when he goes to fight the 5 kings that stole Lot, he went with 300 mighty men.
Yeah.
It's like, that's the ones he got from Nimrod, according to the book of Jasher.
Yeah, that was a war of giants
Yeah.
when he went to rescue Lot.
Interesting. I
These
gotta read
5
it.
kings were going to war with the Nephilim giant clans.
Yeah. It's like a Lord of the Rings kind of type thing happening there. And that was all around the Dead Sea. So that's where the battle was. So if you could get under the Dead Sea, I bet you could find a lot of giant skeletons.
You've said that before.
Yeah.
That might be why it's so salty.
Yeah, could be.
I need that button too. Where's that button at? It's interesting because when you read in Jubilees, it's a completely different take. So it's fascinating just because, again, we read these texts, and the whole reason we kind of need to read these we're not a Hebrew, that lived however many years ago. So when we read Genesis, it's very Cliff Notes. I always say the same thing, but it is. They did not include a lot of the details of these stories. So you have to obtain the details elsewhere because we don't know the stories like they knew the stories, right? And it's interesting here because what you wind up having is, at the time, they're living in Ur, right down there in Babylon, that whole Chaldean area, and down by Mesopotamia, kind of southeast of Turkey, and closer down towards the Persian Gulf area. And it says, Haran, his brother, took himself a wife in the 3rd year of the 3rd week, and she gave birth to a son in the 7th year of this week, and called his name Lot. Nahor, his brother, took to himself a wife in the 60th year of the life of Abram. That is, in the 4th week in the 4th year of it, Abram rose in the night and burned the house of the idols. And he burned all that was in the house, and no man knew it. And they rose and sought to save their deities from the fire. Haran, who is Abraham's brother, hasted to save them, but the fire flamed over him, and he was burned in the fire, and he died in Ur of the Chaldees before Terah his father. And they buried him in Ur of the Chaldees. So that's kind of how, either way,
well, they both burn up in fire, both stories. So you got the telephone game, the oral tradition over the years.
Right.
The story kind of changes, takes on new life of its own.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, right? And then so that's when Terah's like, okay, we got to get out of here either way. So then they go all the way back up to Haran in Turkey. I'm really looking forward to, we have a show. I don't know if you saw this or not. I haven't really had a chance to talk to you too much the rest of the week. We had some things go down, but we're going to have Andrew Jones back on here in a few weeks. And one of the things that we're going to,
Andrew's awesome.
Yeah, he's awesome. He's actually in Turkey, right? He lives in Turkey, and he's taking people on. Oh man, he's got some. Oh, dude,
he set a 4-hour interview with me one night, bro.
Really?
Yeah, I told him, I said, if you're wanting to stop, he said, no, I'm good. I'm like, well, no pressure for me. As long as you're willing to talk, I'll sit and listen, Daddy.
Hey, man, as long as the turnip is producing, we're going to keep squeezing.
That's right. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, he's awesome, man. I think he did ours. He wasn't feeling well at the time. Your eyes were, you were having horrible allergies the night we talked to him. So it was kind of funny, but we had a great talk with him on the Exodus, but we're going to have him back on, and we're actually going to get into Turkey and all the sites within Turkey. And Haran's going to be one I want to focus on a lot. And then, but you've got so much up there, man. You got Göbekli Tepe, you've got Karen Tepe, you've got obviously the Ararat site, the Drupanar site, and all that stuff.
Dr. Judd thinks that's where the Tower of Babel was.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I think I've heard that before.
Yeah, you have the split of all because he's a linguistic guy. He talks about the Indo-European language and how that developed, and everything just kind of sprung out from there. And he said, so according to the Bible, you have the developing of the nations and the tongues at Babel. He said, so that would place the Tower of Babel in Turkey.
Yeah. It was something, we had a really cool Bible study on this last Monday too. We've been doing a study on supernatural at the church, which is kind of like the light version of the unseen realm. And I got to tell you the truth, I'm not a fan. I mean, I like the fact that it's conveying the information, and especially for a bunch of people
who scholarly.
Yeah, well, I think when Mike was writing it, I think in his attempt to dumb it down, he went a little too far, and some of the way that he wrote it, I think he conveys a message that isn't exactly what he meant to convey, and it can be a little confusing in places. And I'd have to have the book here in front of me to describe it, but I love the Unseen Realm. The Unseen Realm was unbelievable. But the nice thing is, it's like literally like 40% of our church is probably attending this Bible study, which is all of like 20-some people.
Yeah.
But it's awesome because, man, it's one of those moments where you can see, and him and I in there are like, well, this is old news to us,
Yeah.
But for them, man,
the dots are connected.
They don't have any of that connection, right? They don't understand Psalm 82. They don't understand, a lot of these things. So this is all new information. So it's kind of fun because you can kind of see them like experience this for the first time, right? So it's just kind of fantastic. But now we're looking forward to talking to Andrew again here soon. So that's kind of one of the things is, go ahead, man.
Oh, I was just going to say, I didn't know how long you wanted the show to run, but I definitely want to get into his wives.
Oh, yeah, let's do this.
Some of that stuff, because that was probably some of the most fascinating stuff for me on this journey of discovery with Esau, was because once he's, screwed out of his birthright in his eyes, he goes into like full rebellion. And he takes 2 Canaanite wives. And if you follow genealogies and listen to Gary Wayne, he lays it out, fantastically. But these Hivites and Horites that he married into were known giant clans. And his father-in-law, mentioned in genealogies, is Seir. And in Hebrew, that means hairy. So they were hairy giants. And here he is, this hairy, quote-unquote, man, marrying into and interbreeding with them. And then he takes a 3rd wife from the clan of Ishmael. And so these guys are both the eldest brothers that were disinherited and screwed out of their birthright. And you can just imagine the hatred that was sown in this family line. And when you go back, all your Muslim nations and all your people groups that utterly hate God's people and want to wipe them off the face of the earth, trace their beginnings to this union. And when you get to Moses and his wilderness wanderings, the first group that they are reported to have encounters with is the Amalekites. Well, when you go to the genealogies, Esau, from the union of Seir and these giants, produced, I'm drawing a blank on his name now, but he ended up having a son in this same clan named Amalek. So Amalek was Esau's nephew. And his name is where the whole tribe gets their name, the Amalekites. And in Hebrew, that means the blood lickers. So, and when you get this encounter in the wilderness wanderings of God's people, it says that they were basically doing like militia type warfare. They were like ghosts. They were attacking and killing the weak and the elderly and the slow that was in the back of the pack. They were just picking them off like ghosts. And then when they finally have their battle, the only way they can overcome them is through supernatural aid. If you remember in that story, the Amalekites were winning until Moses stood on the hilltop and held up his staff. And as long as he held the staff up, they were able to overcome the Amalekites. So it's like you had some sorcery warfare going on behind the scenes. And the wilderness wanderings is when you get all your do not do this, do not do that from God. And you don't get rules and laws and things like that unless people are already doing those things and breaking those laws. And if you look at some of those, I think it's telling of the people that they were encountering in their wanderings, which was the Amalekites. It says, no longer will you sacrifice to hairy goat demons. Then it says, you shall not seek necromancers and sorcerers. You shall not pass your children through the fire of Molech. You shall not drink the blood, the life forces in the blood. I think that this tribe that was known as the blood lickers, that's what they were doing. They were drinking the blood. They were sacrificing children to the fire. They looked like hairy goat demons, and they were sorcerers and necromancers. And when you get into the writings of Rashi, the medieval French rabbi, his commentaries, he says that the reason why they were commanded to kill every man, woman, and child is because these people were known shapeshifters, and they would shapeshift into animals to avoid capture. And when you get into some of the Jewish lore, it even says that Esau was trying to have his children hunt down Jacob and kill him And it said in his anger that Esau says that he will bite his neck until he is dead and drain him of his blood. Goes
Vampire.
right in line. So it's crazy, especially when you go through history. I think this was the ancient origins of that stuff. Because when you go to like Sardinia, for instance, they find all kinds of remnant of giants there. They have giant tombs, all kinds of giant lore, because I'm in line with L.A. Marzulli. Once they try to retake the Holy Land, all the tribes that they're commanded to attack were these giant tribes. So there was a bunch of them that were smart enough to know they couldn't win, and this was the Great Diaspora. They loaded up on their ships and took off and went to other lands. But in Sardinia, on the winter solstice, they have this tradition. They say they don't even remember where it came from or where it started. They just done it as long as they can remember. But they take black goat's fur and cover their entire body with it, and then have a carved wooden mask they put over their face, and they cover their back in bells, and they dance. And Isaiah talks about these satyrs will dance in the desolate lands. And they abduct women from the crowd. And during this time, children that are coming of age, to prove their worth, they build a huge bonfire, and the children have to leap through the bonfire as like a birthright or a coming of age ceremony. So once again, they're passing their children through the fire.
Yeah, it's like more
dressing
like
up
light.
these hairy goat demons and dancing.
Crazy. It's kind of funny because I go back here, Benny, you were talking, and I read this, and again, we don't get this in the Bible. You got to go extra biblical for it, but it's in the Book of Jubilees again. And this is, we've gotten off the ark, and, you know, God and Noah are making these covenants together of like, okay, we're starting fresh. You know, you got a clean slate. We've purified everything. So here are the do and do nots, right? And God says the same thing to Noah: increase and multiply on the earth and become many, and a blessing on it. I will inspire the fear of you and the dread of you and everything that is on the earth and in the sea. Look, I have given you all beasts and all winged things and everything that moves on the earth and the fish in the waters, all things for food. As the green herbs, I have given you all things to eat, but you shall not eat anything alive or with blood in it, for the life of all flesh is in the blood. Or your blood or your lives will be required. At the hand of every man, at the hand of every beast, will I require the blood of man. Whoever sheds man's blood by man, shall blood be shed, for in the image of Elohim he made them. So yeah, there's the whole covenant. I think the whole thing that, again, we don't get in the Bible, but the reason he grew a vineyard and he was actually partaking of the wine when he gets drunk, goes into his tent, the whole deal with Ham, sees him naked. That was actually celebration of this covenant that is made right here. Yeah, that I just read. And you can see here, like what you just shared, all these things are what we wind up going right back to in the minute Noah's dead. It seems like the way it reads is like the minute Noah's dead, they're like, yeah, Daddy, we promised we won't kill each other for land and we won't war against each other. And the minute he dies, it's like, okay, it's game on. Like Game of Thrones, you know, instantly gets thrown into the deal. But it's funny to me too, because all of these mythological creatures that we talk about, like vampires and werewolves and, you know, minotaurs and centaurs, vampire. I was thinking vampire when you were just talking about that.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we know of a vampire, right? So
my dad witnessed a shapeshifter. Tried to kill him. He was my mom and dad, they did missionary work for the American Indians out west back in the 70s. And he went to this lady's house. It was a trailer because he was going to be doing a revival there for a week. And the medicine man heard he was coming. So what he would do was he would put the skin of a wolf on and he would turn into the wolf. Yeah. And so my dad's like, what is that? And she's like, oh, it's the medicine man. He's turned into a wolf. He's trying to kill you. Just plain as day. He was like stuffing like rags down the exhaust pipe of the furnace in the trailer, and he was like beating on the walls and everything, trying to claw in to kill my dad. And she's like, don't worry, he'll be here tomorrow, and I'll stitch him up from everything, send him on his way. And I mean, he's like just crazy.
No thing.
Yeah, and it's just, and my dad, he's like sitting in there, and he's like, okay, he's like, he just accepted it because that's what they believed.
Yeah.
And so the guy the next day comes in, and he's like cut up and looking angrily at him and everything. I mean, that's just another way that Satan tries to stop us.
Yeah.
And so he said it was just the most intense thing that he's ever been a part of.
Belief is a powerful thing, man, whether that's belief, the faith of a mustard seed, tell the mountain to move here or there or whatever, or the other side, because again, we go back to the Exodus and we go back to Pharaoh, right? And these sorcerers are able to duplicate a lot of these things. They just couldn't stop it. Yeah. So the power exists there. We read this. I don't know why the church nowadays treats it like this is fantasy and make believe and these things can't happen. Yeah. They can happen, and like we were talking earlier too, we're talking about maybe doing a show, and we've got this case going on in Indiana right now with these girls that were killed in kind of northern Indiana when they were walking on the Monon Trail. And what's really starting to finally come out now in the court hearing is they were sacrificed. This was a human sacrifice, and they were seemingly making a sacrifice to Odin. They were into Odinism. And these girls literally had their blood drained out of their body. So we're going to probably have a show on that, because I don't think a lot of the facts are probably going to get out to the people aren't going to really pay attention to a lot of that side of it. No. And I think it's important that we talk about it, because this is ritualistic human sacrifice.
I have my own opinions, and I will just
hold them for the show.
Hold them for the show.
There's your teasing.
I'll tell Justin after the show.
Yeah, there you go. So Justin gets the special after hours treatment. All you guys got to come back.
Wah, wah, wah.
Wah, wah. Yeah, where's my button? Here it is. Now I can use it. There we go. You guys can check it out. But please, we didn't mean to interrupt you. It was a nice side tangent, but please do continue what you're saying about the wives and all that if you got more.
Oh, I mean, that was pretty much it. Just, I thought it was fascinating intermarrying with giants and him being this hairy, dude. And then you get Isaiah talking about, dancing satyrs in desolate areas, and then no longer will you sacrifice to hairy goat demons. And so hairy goat demons will dance. You have the bones down there in Sardinia, them being sorcerers, just all that connectivity there. I just found that fascinating.
Yeah, that is pretty
So
great.
Do you think Bigfoot today is the descendants of Esau?
Yep. And here's the thing. I tell people, because a lot of people, when I bring that up, I'm like, if you let this text say what it says, if we saw this man covered in hair from head to toe like a hairy cloak out in the woods, without hesitation, we would say this was a Bigfoot. This is a Sasquatch. And then people say, well, it can't be a humanoid type person because there's too much, woo involved in it. You have mind speak coming through portals, footprints just disappearing. You even have UFO phenomenon associated sometimes with this Bigfoot. Yep. And I was like, well, I just showed you the genealogies. According to the book of Enoch, their disembodied spirits are demons left to torment the earth. Yep. So if that is true and these things can remanifest, they would remanifest in a former form that they're familiar with, that commanded power and respect. Of course, they're going to show up looking like hairy Sasquatches because that's what they look like.
Yeah.
And they're not human, they're spiritual. But maybe through witchcraft, or maybe the help from their aunts and uncles who are the sons of God still ruling over the nations now, according to Deuteronomy 32. Maybe these UFO is their way of conveyance. And they show up and help their nieces and nephews and open up that other dimension and let them get out and play every so often.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy, isn't it? I mean, there's a huge correlation between these sightings and some kind of UFO sighting. So there's got to be something there that they're tied together. So
could I tell my Bigfoot story?
Oh, were they going to get an episode 56 and an episode whatever this is? Yeah, go ahead.
Well,
got to modify the T-shirt now.
Yeah, I got to. I'm sorry.
No, I'm teasing you. Go ahead.
A few years ago, we were at a friend's place, and it was early morning, like 2, 3 in the morning. Had a bonfire, just friends. Probably about 1.5 miles away, there's some donkeys, and we hear this really loud. I guess the best way to describe it, I'll give a shout out. The beginning of the Blurry Creatures, where they have the Sasquatch screaming. That's the only sound I can find. That was that.
That was my contribution to this story.
And so then the donkey shut up. And one of the guys in the group sits there. He mimics it the best he could. And it calls back. And it's a little closer. And it goes on. I mean, it was probably about 1.5 miles away. In about 5 minutes, it was right on us. Less than that. It was so dark we couldn't see out in the bean field, but we could hear something moving. And I look around and I'm like, does anybody have a gun? Because that's my first thought. I'm like, well, if something's coming, we're dead if we don't. And we're like, well, no, because, I'm like, wait, all of us here don't have a gun when we usually carry all the time. And they're like, no. And it gets a little bit closer. And I still to this day, I said I saved our lives. Everybody's mad at me still to this day because they wanted to see what it was. But me being the smart, intelligent person that I am, didn't want to have a missing arm and a missing leg.
At best.
Yes. So I was like, for a second, I was like, what if it's like looking for a date, man? I was like, what if you just mimicked that?
Your mate calling back to him.
Yeah. And I was like, so I started singing Cheap Trick, I Want You to Want Me. And the minute it did that, it turned and it went like so close to like, we could hear it get further and farther away. It was like a split decision. I don't want to be part of this. Turned it.
And it found another liberal transgender Sasquatch.
Yeah.
Nope. Ain't happening.
It took, the fastness, I can't tell you how fast it moved. I mean, I want to say it was almost like it teleported is how fast it was. I mean, it wasn't just like it was like boom. And we could hear it like on the other side of the state road that was close to us was about 2.5 miles away. That's how fast. And it was just like 30 seconds. And I believe we were all to believe it was a Bigfoot, but can't prove it because we didn't see it because, to this day, they're still mad at me. But I'm like, what else are we going to do? But that's my, that's my one story. And a lot of weird things happened out in those woods. We would see red and blue lights floating.
Mm-hmm. You told me that one.
And we would see all kinds of weird things. Now, I want to go back there, but we're not really.
Take a gun with you this time.
Not really communicating with those people right now. But it was just like, we don't see them anymore. Yeah. People move on and things happen and change. But it was the most crazy thing. And I'm like, that's Bigfoot.
So the takeaway of this story is either Bigfoot is A, not a Cheap Trick fan.
Yeah.
B, not a you singing Cheap Trick fan.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a C. It's either A or B.
I know.
But the moral of the story is if you hear Bigfoot, you can sing Cheap Trick too, and hopefully A is what's true and it'll run away.
To this day, I saved our lives.
There you go. You saved some lives, man. Well, Justin, one last question for you, man, and then we'll let you have your day back. But what are some things you got coming up on the show that you want to share with the folks? Is there anything you want to share?
Okay, yeah. Let's see. I do the live premieres every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the YouTube channel. And this Monday, tomorrow, we have Mike Stibbs, and the show's called Backdoor to the Astral. So me and Mike both come out of really hard use of recreational drugs, in our BC days before Christ.
Mhm.
So me and him get on there and we talk about some of our experiences with hallucinogenics.
Yeah.
And some of the experiences and entities that we've dealt with and other stories of people and their dealings with these entities. And we go into Strassman's work, that professor from New Mexico that actually done the legal testings through the FDA and gave dimethyltryptamine through an IV drip. And all his test subjects reported the same things. They all seen this cosmic serpent, and they were actually seeing the same places. And so they were actually mapping this other realm in their studies. So it's kind of like 11 in the Upside Down,
Yeah.
the Stranger Things. So, but we have a discussion about that and how we think that is just, according to the book of Enoch, the angels taught the cutting of roots, and that's a way to communicate with this astral realm and this place where these other entities are locked away in. So that was a really interesting and educational episode. And that's Monday, and then after that we have another show that's pretty interesting the next week, and that's with Vicky Joy Anderson, and we talk about the Markaba, and we ask the question: is that truly the chariot of the gods? And for those that are not familiar, the Markaba is like a way to travel through time and space and the astral realm. And the New Age used this, and they perverted it because there is mentions of the Markaba in the Bible, but they totally pervert it. And I don't want to spoil it, but if you want to find out what the Markaba truly is, come check us out on that episode. It will blow your mind.
Cool, dude. That's awesome. And again, if you want to check Justin out, I'm going to try to add this to the screen really quick. Maybe if it'll let me. Maybe it won't let me while I'm live, but you can actually check Justin out at Prometheus Lens Podcast.com. So check him out over there and give him a listen. Again, he's out there on pretty much everything under the sun, same as us. So, Justin, you are awesome, brother. Thanks so much for your time, man.
No, I had a real good time. And we also recorded an episode on my end. We got about 2 weeks, and then that should be released.
Uh-oh. Okay. The 2-week countdown.
Just the final countdown.
There we go.
I just scared all the Bigfoots away.
That's right, man.
Well,
they fled in terror. So, and we didn't even have to use you for anything, dude.
No, that's good.
It's pretty awesome.
That's good.
So.
That's good.
That's right. Yeah, take your shotgun with you next time around. By the way, thanks for the cutting roots thing, because I've often wondered what that meant, and I never really put that together.
Yeah,
and now it makes perfect sense, because one of the things that, not to dive back into the show because that's where we're headed, but one of the things that I watched, did you get a chance to watch the Americas yet? The latest, what's it called?
Ancient Apocalypse?
Yes, thank you. Ancient Apocalypse that came out on Netflix.
I want to. I let my Netflix subscription go, and I've been saying I want to pick it back up just to watch that second season, but I haven't done it yet.
Yeah, he gets into South America, because it's not just America, but South America too. But he gets into the whole DMT ayahuasca thing, and how there is, what you can tell from that is there's absolutely, he's going to go get some DMT right now. That's where he's going. But there is absolutely no way that somebody would just magically come up with a concoction on how to make that without being shown. Oh, look at that.
Yeah, this week. That is his book on the whole thing. It's about, he talks about he deep dives into Rick Strassman's research, He tells about his own ayahuasca trips.
Yep. Yeah. he talked about
Dives
that there.
into Darby's book, The Cosmic Serpent. This is a really good book, but it's on shamanism and the use of drugs to contact the other realms. And just a little added bonus kind of to rub it in a little bit, because why not, you know?
Did you get it signed?
It's signed, bro.
You nerd. No, it's not signed there. You thought the wrong side, so that's what you get. So, no, we're turning him off. We're turning him off. Nope, can't see it. No,
Bang!
that's awesome, dude. Congratulations. Congratulations. Well, again, brother, we appreciate you, man.
No, I had a good time. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, man. Take care. And with that, I bid you adieu. Until next time on Tinfoil. Take care.
Bye.
Maybe.
Sugoi.
Uh-oh. I locked it up. I
I was
made it
like-
very angry.
I didn't even pull out the
The
head,
skull.
the head, man.
You're going to get the end of
I
it
had
there.
a lot of new signatures at that BlurryCon event. I got
Oh, I bet.
Albernino, Tony Merkel, Doug Van Dorn, Laura Sanger. But I told Tim, I said, you have to sign over Giorgio.
There you go.
You gotta get one over the ancient alien guy, you know.
It's funny. I can't, it's not letting me turn the stream off. So I'm going to have to recycle
Oh.
here. So if
We're
we
still
lose,
live.
if we lose you,
Glad I
we'll-
didn't do nothing embarrassing.
That's right. See, we tricked you. So I don't know what we got going on here, but it does not like us right now. So I'm going to recycle this and
It's like,
refresh
hey,
it. Lose you, we lose
Doing
you. But
great. Don't end
thanks,
it.
man.
So I'm still in that. So am I still alive?